Friends, continuing our economy discussion, today I am going to tell you about a very important discussion about RBI, Reserve Bank of India, various monetary instruments. What is monetary instruments? It is the instruments in which the RBI controls the economy. Especially, say for example, there is so much of a inflation. What RBI does? RBI checks the inflation. It is the responsibility of RBI to check inflation. So these are some of the tools in which the RBI controls the money flow or the economy. So first and foremost thing, cash reserve ratio. Cash reserve ratio is what? Every bank has to retain a certain percentage of its demand and time liabilities in cash. Remember it. Setting demand and time liability in cash with Reserve Bank of India, which can be raised by RBI to drain out excess liquidity from the economy. What happens whenever there is excess amount of money flowing in the economy? Then what happens? There is high inflation. When there is high inflation, the growth rate will slow down. Always remember this. Whenever there is a high inflation in any of the economy, the growth rate will slow down. People will invest less. Foreign investment will come less because there is so much of inflation. It will be costly for the foreign investors to invest in the economy. So in order to control the economy, not only that, inflation also creates problem for each and every sections of the society. There should be a healthy balance of inflation, because a healthy balance means the range is somewhere between 3 to 5%. That is the range. In many of the recommendation it is said that 4% is the healthy level of inflation. So the banks has to keep certain demand and time liabilities with RBI, which is to drain out excess liquidity in the economy. When there is so much of a money chasing too few goods, there will be inflation. So I hope this particular flow you can easily understand how the cash reserve ratio works, this particular direction. When banks, money flow they have to keep with RBI, that is cash reserve ratio. All the banks they have to keep it in reserve with RBI. When RBI increases the CRR, what happens? The money is drained out of the system from the banks to Reserve Bank of India. I hope the concept is clear to all of you guys. Then RBI uses CRR to check inflation in the economy, which I have already discussed. It drains out excess amount of money and thus controls the economy and inflation. Then statutory liquidity ratio, very very important. What is statutory liquidity ratio? This is another monetary tool of the RBI, as per which every bank is required to set aside again a certain percentage of demand, time liabilities and retain in cash, gold or government security with RBI. What is there in SLR? Statutory liquidity ratio means the banks has to keep another monetary tool in which they have to again put aside some portion of their money in demand, time liabilities, cash, hard cash, that is liquidity, gold, that is also liquid, then government security, government bonds. Government bonds are very effective for banks, because what banks does, whenever they invest in government security, they will earn the interest rate. That is the reason why most of the banks, for SLR purpose, they are using the government securities more instead of other instruments available. So the banks prefer government security as they earn them interest. They will say, RBI will say, you have to put aside this much of SLR. They will say, okay, we will buy government bonds and we will keep it with you. That is the thing. Then bank rate. It is the rate of interest charged by the RBI for lending money to banks against eligible security. Bank rates were raised to discourage banks to borrow from RBI. What happens? Bank rate? Bank rate is the interest charged by RBI for lending money to banks. For lending money to banks against eligible security. Means bank rate of interest charged by RBI. RBI will charge the interest to lending money to banks. Means whenever banks will draw, RBI will get the interest. Bank rates were raised to discourage borrowing from RBI. Means when interest rate will be high, when banks will not borrow it from RBI. That is another instrument. Open market operation, OMO. What is OMO? This is sell purchase of government security by RBI through auction route and not binding on banks unlike CRR and SLR. This is an open market operation is what? Sell and purchase of government security by RBI through auction route. Auction route and binding on the banks unlike CRR or SLR. Hope the thing is clear. What is repo rate? Repurchase obligation. I have made it very simple for you guys. You can, I don't know what other teachers are following. You can easily understand this particular flow. You can easily understand. How? Let me explain you. RBI, what is repo rate? Repo rate and banks. Repo rate is when money flow will go to banks. Means money will, means banks will take money from RBI. What will happen? Interest rate receiver will be RBI and banks will be interest payee. They will be paying interest to RBI in repo rate. That is repo rate, repurchase rate. When reverse repo rate, what happens? RBI is the interest payee. The same is against means the reverse direction. Interest rate payee will become RBI and banks will be the interest receiver. That is when the money flow will be in this direction. Hope the things are understood to you. For liquidity, repo rate is for short-term liquidity crisis of banks. Whenever banks feel short-term liquidity crisis, they follow this repo rate and reverse repo rate by the banks. I hope the discussion is very clear. This is very important discussion. Thank you very much.